right, boys and girls, so I hope you've had a wonderful time in the book of Judges. We're going to wrap up Judges today with our story on Samson. Samson's one of my favorite stories from the Bible. I wonder if you've noticed though, boys and girls, as we've gone through the book of Judges, the common theme that runs throughout these stories, and that is the fact that God chooses often inadequate and imperfect people to achieve his purposes. Let me remind you of some of the people we've looked at. Do you remember Ehud? He had physical weakness. Then there was Gideon. It was both his cowardice, he was at the beginning, and then also his pride at the end. And then today we have looked at Samson, and his problem was his willful indulgence in sin. And yet, despite his sin, God still used Samson to deliver his people. Samson was easily tempted, and he even flirted with sin. That means that he entertained it. Sadly, Samson suffered the consequences of his sin, which ultimately led to his blindness, imprisonment, and his death. That, boys and girls, is why the gospel is such good news, because it tells us of the hope that we have in Jesus, the perfect, holy rescuer whom God sent to die for his people. Unlike Samson, Jesus, the Bible tells us, you can go read it in Hebrews 12, verse 1 to 4, Jesus resisted temptation to the point of shedding blood. That's the amount of effort that Jesus went to fight sin. So boys and girls, this story of Samson is a great encouragement for us as we see Samson as a broken sinner who was used by God. And also, we see in Samson a very poor shadow of Jesus. On top of that, I think that it is quite likely that we can see a little of ourselves in Samson too. Even though we have trusted in Jesus, we still often give in to temptation and sin, don't we? Sometimes, boys and girls, this is because we stray too close to sin. We go too close to that line. We try to push the boundaries, and we think that because we've been chosen by God, because we are Christians, because we're followers of Jesus, that we'll never actually fall. But can I say to you that this is a very dangerous place to be in. Other times, we know the right thing to do, but we don't have the will to fight temptation, and we give in far too easily. Boys and girls, we are parts of the special people of God, and so as God's special people, we should live to please God in everything that we do, in everything that we think, everything that we feel, say, and do. Temptation is thinking that doing the wrong thing is a good idea for some reason. Sometimes we get tricked into thinking like this, don't we? Sometimes we actually want to do the wrong thing, like stealing a biscuit from your mom's biscuit cupboard. Sin, boys and girls, can be explained as the wrong things that we think, feel, say, and do when we do not treat God as our King and obey him. So you need to remind yourselves, boys and girls, that when we sin, when we do the wrong thing, it's not our moms and dads that we are sinning against, although we've been disobedient, but ultimately, it is God. Like Samson, we all do wrong things, don't we? Even when we are God's special people. So, boys and girls, I want you to hear this. When we do the wrong thing, it is important that we say sorry to God and that we ask him to help us not to live like that anymore, not to make those same mistakes, to stop thinking a particular way, to stop speaking a particular way, to stop doing things that we know don't please God, that we know behavior that we know is not part of the people of God. Did you notice in our story that there was a part of the judges' cycle that we did not see? Do you know what it is? Did you see it? I'll give you a second. The part of the cycle that was not there was that the people did not cry out to God for help to be rescued. But you know what? God still rescued them. He provided a rescuer for them. Do you know that 1,000 years later, God did the same thing when he sent another baby boy to be the greatest rescuer ever? I know you know who it is. It's Jesus, isn't it? Will you thank God for sending Jesus? Because Jesus was different to Samson. He never thought, felt, said, or did anything wrong. He was the perfect rescuer. He always did exactly what God asked him to do, and he lived the way that God said we all should live. I'm even more glad that Jesus died to rescue God's people and take the punishment for all the wrong things that we think, feel, say, and do. We need to trust Jesus. We need to ask to be forgiven, and we need to ask for God's help to live the right way. Will you do that?